great public hall dropping hate mail. Skeptics are casting their own spells of judgment upon what's actually quality writing. But the word is getting out. Rowling is not an occultist. Caldecott adds, since the publication of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling has actually spoken about the Christian theme of the books, saying that to her, the religious parallels have, quote, always been evident, unquote. In the first novel, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the classical, mythological symbols of the snake, the unicorn, and the philosopher's stone function as Christian symbols. After examining the snake, unicorn, and stone in a classical and mythical sense, each will be discussed in the text of the novel, with the final application of each symbol as Christian. In a plethora of pagan cultures, snakes either have a hand in the destruction of life, or they have duties in the underworld. The Sumerian Gilgamesh story shows the snake is demonic. Gilgamesh kills the serpent, quote, with his mighty battle axe, unquote. The Babylonian hero Marduk fights Tiamat, the goddess of the deep, along with all of her serpents. In Norse mythology, Thor vanquishes the serpent, but succumbs to its poison. While all Norsemen vow a world serpent, at the end of the earth's days, will come to the water's edge. The Celtic god of the underworld, Cernunnos, is horned, holds a ram-headed serpent in one hand, and is the model in later Christian iconography for the devil. Even in ancient Americas, snakes belong in the underworld. The unity of the Mesoamerican religions and myths is illustrated by the recurring figures who play crucial roles in 22 epic encounters of the supernatural world. In fact, Quetzalcoatl, a god who descends to the underworld as a feathered serpent, is common to all of Mesoamerica. Serpents are symbols of evil in Harry Potter and are used to foreshadow evil. Parseltongue is introduced very early on. Harry speaks this language of snakes. At the zoo, Harry first connects with snakes by a gesture. The snake winks, Harry winks back. He dialogues with the reptile about impatient visitors looking for a moving snake. I get it all the time. Look, Harry understood. Harry replies, I know, though he wasn't sure the snake could hear him. It must be really annoying. Harry's first snake encounter is peaceful and somewhat comical. It's vital to note that Harry's speaking in a serpent tongue doesn't make him a serpent. It shows his abilities and gifts. The zoo scene functions as a foreshadowing of Harry's ability to communicate with his snake-like nemesis, Voldemort. Voldemort embodies the look of a serpent. When the boy sees Voldemort's face, it is the most terrible face Harry has ever seen. Chalk white with glowing red eyes and slits for nostrils like a snake. When Voldemort is challenging Harry, he describes as a mere face. Not a person. He's mocking Harry. How touching, it hisses. Obviously, his voice is the sound of a serpent. Voldemort is a descendant of Salazar Slytherin, as obvious as it sounds, and Slytherin is a pun on slithering. There's no mistake Voldemort associated with the slithering reptile. He's got the face, the voice, and the name in his heritage. Revealing his true traits, Voldemort is a deceiver. While still hidden in the form of Quirrell's face, the enemy calls out, there is no good and evil, there is only power in those to seek it. Quirrell, possessed by Voldemort and therefore possessing Voldemort's words, is lying just like the serpent in Eden. This is a perfect avenue to compare novel passages to biblical passages. What does the Bible say about serpents? Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat from the tree that's in the middle of the garden. You must not touch it or you will die. You will surely not die, the serpent said. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:1-5. This passage shows the serpent is more crafty than the others. Secondly, it shows that he was made by God. God is over the serpent. He is not God's equal. Third, the serpent is a manipulator. Eve states God's clear instructions in verse 3, but the crafty serpent twists the words around in verse 5. Snakes are negative images in the New Testament as well. But when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to where he was baptizing, he said to them, you brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Matthew 3. Pharisees and Sadducees believed new life came from observing the Torah, not by baptism. Brood of vipers is noted 2 other times in Matthew 12 and 23, and once in Luke's Gospel, chapter 3. In this case, John the Baptist is shouting that the Pharisees and Sadducees are misleading the people. The biblical theme of snakes is associated with deception. What does the biblical imagery mean in application to Voldemort? Voldemort goes, beyond a general negative connotation as a pagan snake who destroys or spends his time in the underworld. He lies to Harry just as the serpent lied to Eve. When the crafty serpent tells Eve she will not die, he also says to her that her eyes will be open and she will be like God. It's as if the garden serpent / Voldemort said, Harry, Eve, there is no good or life or evil death. There is only power of knowledge. The concepts are the same. Harry or Eve, good is equated with life, evil is equated with death. Power is a result of knowledge. The deception is the same. Rowling is drawing on biblical serpent traits and applying them to Voldemort's character and actions. Voldemort is a true deceiver. Furthermore, he's also a leech. Having form only when he can share another's body, Quirrell is a host for Voldemort. Granger flat out states, to remember this is John Granger, not Hermione. Tom Riddle is the young Voldemort, Satan, stand-in the Harry Potter books. The Dark Lord Voldemort, or the evil one. Voldemort is Satan. If Voldemort is a leech and Voldemort is a figure of Satan, the Nemesis uses Quirrell like his own personal Judas. Many know Judas deceived Jesus, but it's also written that Satan possessed him. Then Satan answered Judas, call is scary, one of the 12, Luke 22. It is possible Quirrell is fighting with himself or with the snake inside him. After all, his name is Quirrell, as in a fight. Voldemort leeches not only upon Quirrell's body, but upon another creature. Unicorn blood has strengthened me these past few weeks, confesses Voldemort. The average reader may think of the unicorn in terms of the mythical tale, believing Rowling is using just a stock scene of an innocent creature harmed by an evil one. In the New York Museum of Natural History, unicorn myth is recorded in this simple way. Over 2,000 years ago, Greek travelers told tales of unicorns living in far-off lands. National Geographic highlights unicorns in Asia as wise. Evil spirits, monsters, and intelligent animals, such as the phoenix and the unicorns, also populate the world of Chinese mythology. And with Rowling, at first the text seems to focus merely on the purity of the mythical unicorn. When Hagrid informs the centaur Ronan that a unicorn has been hurt, Ronan replies, always the innocent are the first victims. When Harry sees the unicorn, the focus is on the destruction of beauty. Harry had never seen anything so beautiful and sad. Its lungs and her legs were stuck out at odd angles. Where it had fallen and its mane was spread pearly white on the dark leaves. Harry witnesses not only the bleeding unicorn, but a cloaked figure drinking the creature's blood. Friends of the Centaur explains the code regarding unicorns. It is a monstrous thing to slay a unicorn. The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure, in defense is to save yourself. You will have but half-life from the moment the blood touches your lips. Rowling's unicorn is special. The unicorn is not just a pretty mythical white thing contrasting ugly evil. The biblical view of the unicorn is defined by the medieval church. The medieval church paired the unicorn with Christ. One evidence for this is the medieval unicorn tapestries. Dr. Michael De La Hood of Washington State University describes in a tapestry entitled, "The Unicorn is tamed and betrayed by the maiden, the mythical creature in Christ." Allegorically, as the unicorn surrenders his fierceness and becomes tamed by means of a maiden, so Christ surrendered his divine nature and became human by means of the Virgin Mary. The association was condemned early on in Christianity because of pagan associations, but that didn't last. The American Museum of Natural History, mentioned earlier, also includes details on European unicorn tapestries, similar to De La Hood's. So what is to be made of a unicorn in the Sorcerer's Stone? The unicorn sacrifice aligns with not just the medieval Christ, but the sacrificial system of the Jewish nation. Henry Halley, Bible scholar, describes the Jewish sacrificial law this way. The sacrificial system of divine origin was placed of God at the very center and heart of the Jewish national life. Whatever its immediate applications and implications may have been to Jews, the unceasing sacrifice of animals was designated of God to burn into the consciousness of men a sense of their deep sinfulness, and to be an age-long picture of the coming sacrifice of Christ, toward whom they pointed and in whom they were fulfilled. Haley is streamlining Leviticus 8 and 9 to highlight the role of sacrifice in Judeo-Christian culture. He also explains rules about purity of sacrifice in Leviticus 21 and 22. Sacrificial animals must be without blemish and at least 8 days old. The without blemish part is vital. The centaur informs Harry that the unicorn is innocent and pure. Furthermore, Voldemort's gain was a temporary extension of life. Like the Hebrew sacrificial system, temporary life was given. Christ was pointed to by the Old Testament lamb, the symbol of innocence and of life. A unicorn's blood gives temporary life because a lamb gave temporary life, or forgiveness, which is synonymous to life. The medieval church saw the unicorn as a symbol, a shadow, but not the actual Christ. The church validates St. John's claim, calling Jesus the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, John 1:29. Hence, the unicorn is a shadow of the innocent Lamb Christ, not a stock mythical creature. Unicorn blood gives life, and so does a certain mythical stone, a stone that turns base metals into gold. Alchemists in the Middle Ages experimented with the idea of a philosopher or sorcerer's stone. Eventually, the stone moved from the secular science community to the religious community. James R. Keller quotes Joseph Mazzeo in an article about the metaphysical writer John Donne. In his sermon, Death's Duel, John Donne reveals the occulted similarities between the mystic experiments of the alchemists and the magical transformations of humanity in the process of Christian salvation. The poet demonstrates that Christ shared many qualities with the alchemist philosopher's stone. While the stone's objective was to transform base metals into gold, Christ's role is to transmute base humanity into spiritual gold. Again, a former pagan symbol is functioning as a Christian symbol, and Rowling details the application. Dumbledore explains that Harry is selfless and his mother was selfless. Harry asks about his own intentions. How did I get the stone out of the mirror? His mentor replies, you see, only the one who wanted to find the stone, find it but not use it, would be able to get it. Otherwise, they'd be just seeing themselves make gold, or drinking elixir of life. Dumbledore tells Harry, Quirrell could not harm him because of his mother's love. Your mother died to save you. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love. Calgott agrees completely. Voldemort underestimates the power of Harry's mother's love for this reason. He cannot understand the power of self-sacrifice, since it is rooted in the one thing that cannot bring us personal power. Self-sacrifice rooted in love is exactly what Christ held. As Donne said, Christ's role is to transmute base humanity into spiritual gold. This is a way of explaining self as pure love. The stone has one more significance, and that it hints at the stone from Christ's temptation. Voldemort demanding the stone from Harry. Why don't you give me that stone in your pocket? Don't be a fool, snarled the face. Better save your own life and join me. Dumbledore reminds the reader, the stone gives money and life. The manner of Voldemort's demand to Harry is an incredible thing compared to the scriptures about the temptation of Jesus. From Luke. The devil said to him, if you are the Son of God, tell the stone to become bread. Jesus answered, it is written, man does not live by bread alone. The devil led him to a high place and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world and said to him, I will give you all authority and splendor, for it has been given to me, and I can give to anyone I want to. So if you worship me, it will all be yours. Jesus answered, it is written, worship the Lord God, and the Lord your God, and serve him only. Luke 4:3-3. And in Matthew's gospel, Jesus actually says, away from me, Satan, when offered the kingdoms. Chapter 4, verse 10. Voldemort tempts Harry to save his own life and to have shared Voldemort's power, his kingdom. Join me, he says to Harry. Furthermore, Voldemort wants the Sorcerer's Stone, a source of life, and the devil asks Christ for a stone to become bread, nourishment, to give life. Granger states how readers confuse the pagan with the Christian. Philosopher's Stone, despite its being a tale of the soul's purification, illumination, and perfection in Christ, written in the medieval language of spiritual alchemy, and heavy with traditional Christian symbols from the Golden Griffin to the Philosopher's Stone, was read by many as an occult fantasy. Rowling is not merely using an occult symbol in her writing, she is using the medieval stone as a Christ image. In Rowling's first novel, the snake, the unicorn, and the Philosopher's Stone are in fact Christian symbols. The snake is cited in Genesis and the Gospels as negative, as a deceiver and as a symbol of evil. Voldemort manipulates Harry Potter as a garden serpent did to Eve. The unicorn is a mythical figure in Greece, Asia, and beyond, but is also a symbol of Christ in the medieval church. The innocent unicorn parallels the Judeo-Christian systems of sacrifice taken out of Levitical codes and gospel notations of Christ as a lamb. The Philosopher's Stone is a medieval stone from the world of alchemy, but is also known as a symbol of Christ in the Middle Ages. Just as the stone is said to refine base metals, turning them to gold, the stone as Christ transforms base humans into spiritual gold in their inner lives. Rowling uses all three of these seemingly pagan symbols to color her novel, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, with rich Christian imagery. In that owl that delivered the mail, it's ironic to note that Christ Church Cathedral in Oxford was the literal film set for the Great Hall, where the owl swoops to deliver their letters.
In October of 1999, Elizabeth Mount, a Christian mother of two from Columbia, South Carolina, spoke openly to a school board meeting where she proclaimed that the Harry Potter books disguise the fact that they are evil. This outcry began a set of events of protest that nearly caused J.K. Rowling's famous series to be banned from many states, including South Carolina. At that time, I was only 10 years old, but I can recall the popularity of the first novel in the schools and how quickly the news spread around throughout the school system about these protests. As someone who is not born to a family practicing a particular religion, I didn't understand at the time what the big deal was. This uproar of protest kept me away from the Harry Potter series until I was late into high school. Now at the age of 22, having read all 7 books and with still no connection to one particular religion, I have decided to examine the series in order to determine what the critics like Richard O'Baines has against the Harry Potter series in terms of religious views. While it is apparent that Harry Potter has religious aspects throughout the series, with ideologies of temptation, symbolism, and numerology, I will argue that when compared to other series such as Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia, the importance of religion is somewhat lacking and therefore should not be criticized. So in order to understand or criticize the controversy, let us first examine some of the ideologies within, in comparison with some Christian views. With that said, the most tempting and most popular idea revolves around, of course, temptation, especially for the main characters of the series. Characters such as Jenny, Cho, and the Beauxbatons can be a reference or a symbolic representation of the serpent in the Bible. The idea that these female models seem to tempt Harry in certain ways gives Christians the opportunity to compare Eve to the story of the apple, as she just explained. In her article, Harry's Girls, Harry Potter and the Discourse of Gender, Meredith Sherlin wrote about the ideal of feminist post-structural theory, in which she compares the Beauxbatons to the Vila, which are kind of like succubuses, that sort of thing, or rather sirens that cause men to lose all reason. She uses humanism to support the idea of temptation when she says that Rowling often uses a discourse of rationality to mark males as reasonable and a discourse of irrationality, I cannot talk today, to mark female characters as foolish. This idea, of course, can coincide with the opposite reaction Harry has with Cho Chang, as well as with Jenny Weasley. Sherlin's ideas are certainly irritating to think about, but what about the other temptations, some of which you haven't heard today? Although I cannot recall the source, I have read an argument in which the invisibility cloak is compared to the Shroud of Turin, which concealed Jesus after his death. This proposes one idea of temptation with an example that takes place after Harry receives his first cloak for Christmas in the Philosopher's Stone. Growing up with the emotional abuse from the family who takes him in, Harry finds the temptation to hide, even when he's away from his horrible aunt and uncle. In Book 7, like Jesus, Harry is covered by the cloak after his death, and revives after having a conversation with Dumbledore at Linden's Cross. Up until this scene, however, we only view the invisibility cloak as a way for Harry and his company to hide in the literal sense. The Marauder's Map and the Triwizard Cup can also be seen as objects of temptation. Both items are transporters of some sort for Harry to be closer to evil. They are indeed tempting for Harry, especially the Marauder's Map in the Prisoner of Azkaban, when Harry finds Peter Pettigrew, who ultimately leads him to Sirius Black. Though we later find out Sirius's true intentions, Black is a character portrayed as a rancor up until this point. And although Harry's trip to the graveyard was not as foreshadowed as the map was, the Triwizard Cup can also be considered as a temptation in terms of the title of Eternal Glory that the schools aim for in the Triwizards Tournament. Now, with a better understanding of one ideology, let us continue with the diagnosis of symbolism. Though I do not have a Christian-like perspective, I believe that I can understand the argument of Harry's lightning bolt scar being compared to the religious curse of stigmata. Stigmata is the term used in the diagnosis of a person who suffers from wounds that coincide with the wounds Jesus suffers at or during his crucifixion. The idea of having pain through wounds seems to be a strong case, especially in the Order of the Phoenix, when Voldemort attempts to control Harry's mind through the curse he gave him. For both the scar and stigmata, both signs can be made as an argument for symbolism in the way that the curses are seen in somewhat of a negative perspective. The devil gave it, basically. My roommate, Jasmine Sanders, who is an apostolic Christian, disagrees with this claim of symbolism. Jasmine introduced the fact that Jesus was hurt by man, who simply did not believe in him, whereas Harry was hurt by a man who was intentionally symbolized as the devil. She does not agree that the scar can be seen as a curse when compared to stigmata, but I would like to add my non-religious criticism to this argument. If you look at records of stigmata, you will not only see Jesus, but you will also find later appearances, or rather recorded cases in which Jesus' markings show up on innocent people. Harry's scar is not shared with anyone, nor do others get the same mark upon their foreheads. But again, this is my perspective, and I'm not trying to say that he shares Christ's wounds and he doesn't need others, but this is my perspective, and like Jasmine's, I too agree that maybe it's not considered a curse, but it's still a comparison. A rather important religious symbol in the series is Harry's mother, Lily. From a source that is somewhat unreliable due to a lawsuit with Rowling, Elizabeth D. Schaefer states, Lily Potter's name represents her purity of spirit as demonstrated by sacrificing her life to save Harry. Lilies, in general, signify the resurrection and ascension of Christ after his crucifixion and a symbol of Easter. I find Schaefer's statement to be plausible because I have read the Harry Potter series and never fully read Lily's character in a negative light. Perhaps the only negativity I've read is when Petunia's, Lily's sister, calls her a witch, and according to the Bible, witches are depicted as sinners. It would be not a stretch, in my opinion, to also say that Lily is a symbol of the Virgin Mary, or as was stated in the earlier presentation, the flower that Mary has. However, with witches being depicted as sinners, perhaps an argument can be made against this claim. In the context of novels, though, witches aren't bad, so there's the argument. As someone with no Christian values, however, I cannot take a side in the matter. A final religious aspect we can diagnose are the ideologies of numerology. For my particular research, I would especially like to take a closer look at the numbers 4, 3, and 12 in particular. Recently, with the number 4, I've taken a closer look at a comparison with the fact that there are 4 houses at Hogwarts, and there are 4 horsemen in the apocalypses of the Bible. According to Jasmine, the 4 horsemen are the traditional emblems of evil. Though the argument is a stretch, I can somewhat understand how the comparison works. Each horseman represents something bad: death, plague, famine, and war. Obviously, Slytherin would represent the horsemen of war because of the various characters, including Voldemort, who were sorted into this house. Famine can associate with Hufflepuff house, as the corridors are near the kitchen. Both the Ravenclaws and the Gryffindors can fit in the Death Horsemen, as they had a lot of people die in their houses. However, the Plague Horseman is the part that the criticism needs a little more work on, because I cannot find a house that fits into this. It's really hard to divide up which house fits into that. But Jasmine points out that perhaps Christians will see that the fact that there is no sickness in the series, and therefore can be a relation to this horseman. Once more, with no Christian values, again, I can't stake a claim. The most obvious religious number in the Harry Potter series revolves around the number 3. The Holy Trinity can represent Harry, Ron, Hermione, or possibly James, Lily, Snape. It's interesting to look at this number throughout the series because it just shows up so many times. The 3-headed dog. Harry uses his Patronus spell in his 3rd year. There are 3 turns to the time turner that Hermione uses in order to go back into the past. And of course, the Holy Trinity can be viewed in terms of its foundation number, my next number, 12. In numerology, the number 12 is seen as the completed form, the harmony form. In religion, Jesus broke the bread into 12 pieces at the Last Supper because he had 12 disciples. In the beginning of the Deathly Hallows Part 1 film and as well as the book, I checked this, Snape walks into the Malfoy Manor and joins Voldemort at a large table. This scene of 12 followers can be an aspect of religion compared to the Last Supper, where Voldemort represents the Christ figure in a very opposite way. Christ figure, when Jesus turns to Judas and says, "One of you will betray me," Voldemort is almost looking at Snape during that kind of scene, and you get that sense, the same sense. In the graveyard scene in the Goblet of Fire, Voldemort is surrounded by 6 followers, which is half of 12, and also considered to be part of the evil aspect of numerology. In the Bible, the number 12 is also the age in which Jesus discovers that he is God's son. In somewhat of a unique comparison, Harry, at the age of 12, is suspected of being the heir of Slytherin. And at the same time, he is introduced to the first Horcrux. Reflecting on the Prisoner of Azkaban, it is possible to also compare the 12 years Sirius serves in Azkaban to the 12 rooms of hell, according to the eschatological doctrines of Valentine. Now, allow me to turn your attention away from Rowling's works, as we look at the importance of religions in other famous series. The first one we will examine is Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series. Though the books never fully portray the elves as beings that practice their religion, the Valar, or Eru, was created entirely by Tolkien as a new religion. The religion is important to the series as it focuses on the faith. It's a focus and faith of the elves. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is the heir of Gondor, who was also raised by elves after both his mother and father passed away. From the elves, Aragorn learns their traditions, gains their trust, and even marries the half-elf Arwen. It is believed, because of the appendixes at the end of the novels, as well as amongst fans' beliefs, that the Valar of the elves helped Aragorn in governing his people long after he was crowned King of Man. As the series has lasted throughout the years and titled as a classic, it's interesting that other religions have said nothing to a certain degree about this religion, though Rowling's magic is also a fake religion in itself and criticized for being such. Even some religious aspects, such as the Holy Trinity, as was mentioned earlier, of Frodo, Sam, and Gollum have been seen. Another series, The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, has not only been titled a classic, but also as a Christian series, children Christian series. Lewis openly announced, as he was writing the books, that his fantasy series is based on Christianity, its values and beliefs. His character, Aslan, a lion, is Lewis's depiction of God in the world of Narnia. More so, spoiler alert. Don't want to listen to this, close your ears. In the last battle novel, the last novel, Susan, one of the 4 siblings who was crowned the kings and queens of Narnia, cannot get into New Narnia because she has sinned. While the other sister, Lucy, who has been compared to Mary Magdalene, can get into New Narnia. She's been compared to Mary Magdalene because of how she believes in Aslan throughout the series, even when no one else does, just as Mary had with Jesus. Needless to say, religion is a very important part to this series, and Christians celebrate this fact. The first film premiered not only in theaters, but also in churches. And a final series that I quickly want to go over, just because there's one part that's really important to it, is the new Percy Jackson series. Though the books are centered on mythology, we cannot forget that mythology is and was a religion on gods for the Greeks. And like Jesus, Percy is the son of a god, Poseidon, and that is a huge role to this series. As this is considered a new series, however, as of 2001, the books have yet to test the clock of time. However, many suspect that the series will be dubbed a classic within the next few generations, as Lewis and Tolkien's books had. So, now that we've taken a look at a couple of famous series that have religion to the structure, let us return to the controversy over why Harry Potter was nearly banned. For 4 years in a row, from 1999 to 2002, Harry Potter topped the charts as the most challenged books by American Library Association. In Austin Klein's article, Christian Censorship of Harry Potter, he quoted the definition of challenge as any attempt to remove or restrict materials based upon the objections of a person or group. This, of course, is important in his article when he continues to mention certain events, such as in 1999, when a Christian Michigan school superintendent, Gary L. Finstra, took Rowling's books off the shelves and commanded the teachers to stop reading the series to children during read-aloud time. Another event he mentions that shocked even me took place on December 30th, 2001 in New Mexico when a pastor, Jack Brock, conducted a book burning that he dubbed as a holy bonfire. Not only did they burn the Harry Potter books, they also burned the Harry Potter music, movies, and hundreds of people were reported to have participated in this event. The question stands, why did they do this? To answer this question, let us look at another article. Rachel Wagner argues that people consider the books as fantasy and that children understand this concept. It is the adults who do not. Although she does not openly admit her religious views in her article, Bewitching the Box Office, Harry Potter and Religious Controversy, Wagner does express her concerns by stating the books and films have caused uproar among the conservative Christian communities, and goes on to explore the reasons for religious controversy by diagnosing fantasy versus reality, good versus evil, and secular versus religion, yada yada yada. In other words, Wagner states that Harry Potter series is a controversy simply because we are in an age where people are willing to test their faith, and some Christian churches fear this. However, before I end this paper, I would like to introduce I take that back, 1 second. It goes without saying that Christianity advertises magic. Santa is a magical being. He comes around on Christmas, he flies on a magical reindeer, lives in a cold place, has elves as workers. So it is fair for Christianity in particular to criticize Harry Potter because it advertises magic? I don't think so. But why mention this? Why is it important to research the controversy over this matter? My answer would be, there are religious connections to Harry Potter. However, religion is not important to what the series is trying to convey. Therefore, overshadowing the series with Christianity or other religious causes, you lose what the series is about. Rowling wrote about a boy growing up, a boy who overcomes life hardships like being bullied and orphaned, a boy who learns how to gain friendships, and above all, that no matter what, we should never judge a book by its cover.
Our paper is A Circle Has No Beginning, an analysis of the Harry Potter series as a ring composition. When we began to analyze Harry Potter as a ring composition, we noticed that there was already a question that related very closely to our research. What came first, the phoenix or the flame? The answer, of course, is that a circle has no beginning. It always comes back to where it began. This explanation fits perfectly into our understanding of how the Harry Potter series can and should be interpreted as a ring composition. It is clear from her extensive use of ancient mythology and parallels with classic literature that J.K. Rowling had a clear understanding of ancient tradition, so it is not difficult to believe that she made deliberate use of this technique that is lost on many Western readers. It makes complete sense that an author that makes use of quills, parchment, cloaks, and forgotten folklore would be so fond of this archaic formula.
Ring compositions, a history. Ring compositions are one of storytelling's oldest traditions. The earliest performers, bards, griots, biblical heroes, all told many of their tales in the style of ring composition because it gives their piece a notion of finality. Mary Douglas writes in her book, Thinking in Circles, written words lack the support of body language, voice, and physical context. The ring composition does something to fill the interpretive gap by virtue of symmetry, its completeness, and the pattern of cross-referencing. Ring compositions appeal to humans' natural inclination for order and totality. It follows the philosophy that we end the same way we are born. Just like babies, when we become old, we are wrinkly, bald, hard of hearing, and very immobile. Naturally, we seek out stories that are complete and relatable. Since there is no performer expanding upon the text, the symmetry within the ring compositions give life and movement to the words, like the turning of a wheel. There is constant revisitation to previous archetypes or things that may have not been fully expanded earlier in the narrative. Though this ancient formula is not commonly used in Western writing, Douglas states, ring compositions are constructions of parallelisms that must open a theme, develop it, and round it off by bringing the conclusion back to the beginning. It sounds simple, but paradoxically, ring compositions are extremely difficult for Westerners to recognize. The key to understanding a ring composition is to understand its organization. The organization for a ring composition is distinguished between simple framing structures, in which a single repeating element encloses the core material in the pattern AXA, and annular systems is which the core material is set off by two or more concentric rings. Harry Potter is constructed as an ABCX-CBA series, with Philosopher's Stone and Deathly Hallows as the A's, Chamber of Secrets and Half-Blood Prince as the B's, Prisoner of Azkaban and Order of the Phoenix as the C's, and Goblet of Fire is the centered X. The core of the series is Goblet of Fire, the turning point where Harry is no longer safe due to Voldemort's return, so everything prior to Voldemort's return is reflecting everything afterwards. It all begins with Philosopher's Stone, when Voldemort is temporarily vanquished and Harry is placed into the care of his terrible uncle and aunt. Stone sets the beginning for the rest of the series, and many of its plots are not resolved until Deathly Hallows. One of these plots is the parallel relationship between the Philosopher's Stone and the Resurrection Stone. The Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance with astonishing powers, is able to produce the elixir of life, which can give the drinker eternal life so long as the supply of elixir is maintained. The Resurrection Stone, on the other hand, was crafted for the singular purpose of bringing the dead back to life. Both stones are hidden inside powerfully magical devices, the Mirror of Erised and the Golden Snitch, respectively. Both were placed inside these devices by Dumbledore with specific means of obtaining them by Harry. For Harry to obtain them, he had to realize that finding the Philosopher's Stone, without the desire to use it, will free it from the mirror. For the Resurrection Stone, he understands that he must end his own life to rid the world of Voldemort's tyranny, which will open the snitch. The special containers of each of the stones have also have important qualities. When telling Harry about the nature of the mirror, Dumbledore tells Harry that he sees himself holding a pair of thick woolen socks. At the time, Harry wonders if Dumbledore had been entirely truthful. It is not until, in Deathly Hallows, Harry remembers that had been the only personal question that he had ever asked his professor, and remembers that he might not have been telling the truth. And this is the first time Harry begins to question Dumbledore's intentions. The snitch, container of the Resurrection Stone, is revealed to be the snitch Harry caught in Book 1. Along with the stone's example of parallelism, the only times that Harry is seen entering Gringotts Wizarding Bank are during these two books, and on both visits, it is Griphook who assists Harry to reach his desired destination. Hagrid's warning of, "You'd be mad to try and rob it," which is Gringotts, comes full circle when Harry, Ron, and Hermione actually break into the Wizarding Bank. According to John Granger, the Mirror of Erised serves as a parallel to the two-way mirror, the former serving as a gateway to the perceived perception with the images of Harry's family, and the latter serving as a means of actual protection through Aberforth's persistent gaze. As another example, in his first potions lesson, Harry is taught that he will be able to stop her death. In Hallows, the trio makes use of Essence of Dittany, a potion stored in a stoppered bottle that they use to save Ron from death. As a final example, in Stone, Gryffindor triumphs over Slytherin in the Great Hall at the last possible moment, resulting in a tumultuous celebration. At the end of Hallows, Harry Potter, the true Gryffindor, triumphs over Voldemort, the heir of Slytherin, in the Great Hall, which is followed by a rapturous celebration. Chamber of Secrets and Half-Blood Prince are so alike that Rowling said she considered placing much of the crucial information learned in the penultimate book in Chamber instead, but eventually changed her mind. For books 2 and 6, the main focus of the story is learning about the past of Tom Riddle, who will, of course, eventually become Voldemort. Something that is uncannily similar about the riddle story is revealed through the use of memories. And these memories are presented in the parallel structure of chapter 13 in both books, titled The Very Secret Diary in Chamber and The Secret Riddle in Prince. In Chamber, these memories originate from a diary, a horcrux left by Riddle in his school days in order to leave a way for the Chamber's secrets to be opened once more. We learn that Tom was an orphan, magically gifted, charming, resourceful, cunning, and quite willing to ruin the lives of innocent people to get what he wants. In Prince, through the pensive, Harry is shown the past of Tom Riddle, his childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. Chapter 13 becomes the place where Rowling chose to give the reader their first glimpse into Riddle's past, and is that decision that reflects the parallel structures of the series. Tom Riddle's diary can also be used as a parallel for the Half-Blood Prince's Potions book. Both were created by students and left at Hogwarts to instruct later generations. Harry discovers them both, seemingly forgotten and with mysterious, unknown authors, and uses the information without questioning their credibility. Fawkes, Dumbledore's pet phoenix, is introduced in Book 2, and Harry learns of his loyalty to Dumbledore. At the end of Book 6, Fawkes leaves the school forever as a result of Dumbledore's death. Another example is the case of animals coming and going Another case of animals coming and going is the example of Aragog, Hagrid's friend in Necromantula, who is introduced in Story and Chamber and then dies in Prince. Another example is the key player in both of the books, Draco Malfoy, is the suspected culprit, both first as the heir of Slytherin and lastly as Dumbledore's attempted murderer. There is also very clever foreshadowing between these books with the use of the Vanishing Cabinet. In Chamber, Harry hides inside a large black cabinet in Borgin and Burke's to avoid being seen by Draco Malfoy and his father. Later in the very same book, Peeves, under the influence of nearly headless Nick, drops a large cabinet over Filch's office in order to distract Filch and get Harry out of trouble. Filch says upon his return to office that vanishing cabinet was extremely valuable. The very same cabinet is later revealed to be the vanishing cabinet that Draco uses in Book 6 to form a passage between the one in the shop and its parents at Hogwarts.
In both Prisoner of Azkaban and Order of the Phoenix, the prime character is Sirius Black. Harry's estranged godfather presents himself as an escaped prisoner from Azkaban, determined to reunite himself with Harry after his long 12 years of unjust imprisonment. In Phoenix, Harry comes to live at the headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix, which happens to be in Sirius's childhood home. Sirius, desperately wishing for freedom and action, is confined to the place which he despises. Sirius has gone from prisoner to man on the run to prisoner yet again. And when Sirius is introduced to Harry in the third book, he is quickly taken away by the end of the fifth, cast behind the veil, never to return. Sirius only has a real presence in the third and fifth books, and the parallel nature of this gives him to and snatches him away from Harry in a very short time. In both Prisoner and Phoenix, Harry receives a secret lesson in advanced magic, first from Lupin in the manner of summoning a Patronus, and later by Snape, who tries to instruct Harry in the art of occlumency. Mastering both of these lessons is necessary to save Harry's life, and both were well beyond his level of magical education. The four Marauders, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, all make their premiere in Book 3, and are the token symbols of good nature. Harry learns much adoration for his father from Lupin and Sirius, but his faith in his father is severely shaken in Book 5, when he witnesses the Marauders torturing Snape. Books 3 and 5 are centered to the Marauders' stories and necessary for Harry to understand who his father was. In both Books 3 and 5, Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, has a personal hand in dealing with Harry's use of underage magic, and his approaches, while both fueled by desperation, are polar opposites respectively. In Prisoner, when Harry accidentally blows up Aunt Marge, Fudge is there to take Harry under his protection, quickly picking him up from the night bus and bringing him to the safety of the Leaky Cauldron. Fudge's desperation comes from the knowledge that Sirius Black is believed to be after Harry, and Fudge knows that if Harry were killed by the supposed murderer, his government would be severely weakened. Fudge's desperation and attitude change completely in Phoenix, for when Harry summons a Patronus to save the lives of Dudley and himself, the Ministry is quick to demonize Harry and punish him with threat of expulsion and with the snapping of his wand. Fudge no longer wishes to protect Harry, but instead wishes to persecute him, in another attempt to save his reputation. From paternal-like guardian to condemned judge and jury, Fudge mirrored actions show the dangerously shifting nature of the minister and his ministry. Prophecy also plays an important role in these two books. In Prisoner, Professor Trelawney unknowingly foretold that Wormtail would be reunited with Voldemort once more. In Phoenix, it is revealed that Trelawney is the one who foretold that Voldemort would mark him as his equal, Harry as his equal, and that neither could live while the other survived. Lastly, these two books contain the only known instances where there have been escapes from Azkaban, firstly with Sirius Black, and later with many of Voldemort's Death Eaters gaining their freedom. Stone, Goblet, and Hallows. Goblet of Fire plays the role of the center of the ring, the point up to which the previous books are built and after which nothing can be the same. There are several instances where themes are presented across the whole series, but a few key moments are represented only in the first, middle, and final book. One such moment is Harry learning about the power of wands, with Mr. Ollivander Mr. Ollivander plays a large role in each of these instances, informing and reminding Harry of the nature and power of wands. In Philosopher's Stone, Ollivander sells Harry his wand and ominously reveals that Harry and Voldemort's wand share the core of feathers from the same phoenix. Ollivander makes a second appearance in Goblet of Fire at the weighing of the wand ceremony, where he plays the part of foreshadowing the wand-maker Gregorovitch and the importance of the twin cores, which would save Harry's life at the end of the book. Ollivander returns for a final time in Deathly Hallows to share the lore of the power of the Elder Wand, and again to explain the unique relationship between Harry and Voldemort's wands. Ollivander is the only character in the series who has a true understanding of the nature of wands, and he needs to appear every now and then to remind Harry and the readers about the complex magic surrounding wand use. Another example of a running theme between the first, fourth, and seventh books is the use of dragons. While the use of dragon skin, meat, blood, and heartstrings have all been used throughout the series, the only times Harry actually meets a dragon are in the first, fourth, and final books. Norbert is hatched by Hagrid. Harry faces the Horgarian Horntail during the Triwizard Tournament, and the trio escapes Gringotts on the back of an ancient dragon used to guard the deepest vaults. What becomes clear about the dragons is the progression of their ages and natures throughout the books. In Book 1, Norbert is a newly hatched baby dragon, wild and curious. In Book 4, the dragon Harry must face is a fully grown, fully ferocious mother dragon. In Book 7, the dragon is an ancient beast, blind, pale, and angry, but strong and determined to survive. Perhaps the most meaningful reflective narrative example that can be used here is that of Voldemort. In Philosopher's Stone, what remained of Voldemort's soul was blasted from his body by the rebounded curse that failed to kill Harry. He was left as shadow and vapor, less than the meanest ghost. Though he would come to attach himself to Quirrell, there was little else remaining of Voldemort other than this state less than ghost. He strengthens himself with the use of unicorn blood, a substance so pure and innocent that any who use it would live a cursed half-life. In Goblet of Fire, Voldemort has been able to create a more stable body, one capable of holding a wand and speaking to others. Harry sees this form in an instant before it is cast into the cauldron in the graveyard. He says, he is the shape of a crouched human child, except Harry had never seen anything less like a child. It was hairless and scaly looking, a dark, raw, reddish black. Its arms and legs were thin and feeble, and its face, no child alive ever had a face like that, flat, snake-like, with gleaming eyes. After this form has been added to the cauldron and the magic is performed, Voldemort returns to his true form, or at least as true a form that remained to him. The return of Voldemort marks the true middle of the series, the point of no return. He is transformed from vapor to childlike monster to full-bodied once more. Again, the use of innocent blood, this time Harry's, strengthens Voldemort and allows him to come back to power. But by bringing Harry's blood into himself, Voldemort anchors the magic that Lily bestowed upon Harry in his sacrifice to save him, which proves to be Voldemort's undoing. In Deathly Hallows, the process is repeated, but in reverse. Voldemort is at the height of his power, and he has taken over the Ministry and is able to control the Wizarding World at his will. When Harry comes to Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, allowing himself to be killed, he and Voldemort are both temporarily transported to a limbo-like King's Cross, where Voldemort has returned to the baby-like monster. It had the form of a small, naked child curled on the ground, its skin raw and flayed-looking, and it lay shuddering under a seat where it had been left, unwanted, stuffed out of sight, struggling to breathe. Again, Voldemort is the form of a disfigured child, a symbol of what remains of his irreparable soul. The innocent blood that Voldemort so arrogantly took on his way to power was truly his undoing, tying Harry to life, even though he had been slain by the killing curse. When at last Voldemort is defeated, his soul is at last removed from the world, less than ghost, now less than vapor, gone forevermore. The transition from full body to child to vapor is complete, and the blood that paved the way for his life paved the way for his ultimate death.
As a final note, we notice that the we notice that ring compositions are not commonly used in Western writing. Douglas states, ring compositions are a construction of parallelisms that must open a theme, develop it, and round it off by bringing the conclusion back to the beginning. It sounds simple, but paradoxically, ring composition is extremely difficult for Westerners to recognize. For Potter, the most extremely difficult contact challenging Westerners was Rolling's epilogue. Several critics wrote disapproving articles on the matter. Kirsten Ryan for the Daily Telegraph and Sydney responded, "It is the limitation of writing that really shines through in the epilogue, and is the first hint that perhaps the imagination of Rowling is not as fertile as once thought." Michael Schaefer of the Philadelphia Inquirer commented that the epilogue is a wart on a masterpiece. Maybe not a hogwart, but a wart nonetheless. Their frustration with the epilogue is not difficult to comprehend. With the intensity of the Battle of Hogwarts' completion and the general sigh of relief for Voldemort's death, the light, breezy tone of the epilogue was not to be expected, though, following Rowling's formula, it is the only ending that works. The 5-page epilogue in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows sent readers back to the innocence of the first book, the scarlet train with the billowing smoke, running between platforms 9 and 10, luggage trolleys, caged owls. In essence, the magical qualities of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone that engaged readers are revisited. Rowling uses these 5 pages to reiterate her original themes, family and choices. When the series begins, Harry is cast out without a family of his own. Parents gone, unwanted by the Dursleys, Harry found refuge in gazing at images of his lost relatives. Thus, Rowling wanted to give the boy who gazed at the mirror of Erised what he truly desired, a loving family. In addition to revisiting the theme of family, Rowling also stresses the theme of choices once more. The 11-year-old version of Harry is remade into his son Albus. Just as Harry sat with Ron on his first train ride to Hogwarts worrying, Albus asks his father, "What if I'm Slytherin?" The panic of his son immensely decreases after Harry tells him that the Sorting Hat takes your choice into consideration, and that he chose to be a Gryffindor when he was 11. In conclusion, as Voldemort's return to vapor brings full circle the nature of evil and wrongdoing, and the epilogue encaptures the innocence of young Harry journeying on the train for the first time, this completes the circle and brings the ring back to the start, which is to say that the circle has no beginning. Okay, I've got a couple minutes for questions or discussion.
Well, I have more of a comment when you talk about the invisibility cloak as a source of temptation. In Plato's Republic, there's the sort of test of whether someone is just or not. It's called the ring of Gyges, and it's a mythical ring that can make you invisible. And of course, a bad person with that kind of ability would go and do whatever he wanted, peek at people and somehow, have sex with them. And the ring in the Lord of the Rings, of course, is derived from that as well. So the ring and the invisibility cloak are like his cousins. Right. And so when you said temptation, the invisibility cloak, of course. Sure, it never occurred to me. But yeah.
I had a comment also on, you were talking about the lightning scar and comparing it to stigmata. I had always thought there's a verse in Luke where Jesus says, "I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning." I always thought about that more as, Voldemort, was trying to kill Harry, and he couldn't, he fell. Anyway, that was what I thought of. I'd never thought about it comparing those two.
That was actually the first thought that occurred to me when I started all this out. Originally, I was thinking, I'll do a whole paper on numerology, and then I think I was in the 5th book or something, and I was like, oh wait, stigmata. I was reading something about, I was reading Order of the Phoenix, and that's when it occurred to me that I should include stigmata in it.
Thank you guys.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Don't give up on it yet.
But the ring composition, I found that very interesting. I kind of touched on it a bit in my paper.
Don't steal our points.
That was such a cool analysis, and it was really good, and I was really glad to hear it. And you guys touched on things that I didn't even think of, or you formed it into a great way. So my question is, how did you go about researching that? Have people written on this as well, or was this a lot of your interpretation?
Well, I remember as a teenager growing up, I noticed that Book 2 and Book 6 all talked about Tom Riddle, and Book 3 and Book 5 all talked about the Marauders. It seemed like it made sense that she formed it in a way that you opened the book in the center and you would turn out, and all the pages would reflect each other. And John Granger wrote a fabulous book called Harry Potter as a Ring Composition, a Ring Novel, which we got a lot of his ideas. Well, some of his